Welcome to the Building Your IT Career podcast. I'm Matt Moran. I provide advice, strategies, tools, and information you can use to create the most dynamic and rewarding career possible. And right off the bat, I want to apologize that no podcast went out the last couple weeks. I explained it a little bit in my newsletter. If you're not on the newsletter, you should get on the newsletter. But if you are, you may have seen where I made a brief note about that. I'll have a link to a little piece that I wrote called Enjoy Every Sandwich. But what is going on is my mother is struggling with cancer, and we've been out there taking care of her, and it just really scrunched the schedule up, and I'm more than happy to be out there helping her. And so if that means podcast doesn't get recorded, then that's just the way it had to be. In any case, we're back this week. Once again, I don't want to dwell on that, but I have a link to a short piece I wrote kind of reflecting on that a little bit. So there's a link to that in the podcast. But let's get to the topic at hand. I'm not going to cover a bunch of news stories because, once again, time is a bit crunched today, and there's a few reasons for that. It actually relates to the topic at hand. And what we're going to talk about is about refocusing and repurposing your career. Refocusing and repurposing your career. And this comes up really in a couple different capacities. One is very personal, and I'll explain that. It's kind of a refocusing on what I do in my consulting, particularly with Pulse Infomatics and the work that we do. And another is in regards to someone who reached out to me and was referred to me, a young man who wants to learn about getting into technology, and some of the questions he had, which are pretty common really throughout people that are in the industry or want to break into the industry, but also with people who've been in the industry for a period of time and want to, I guess, change direction. And so I want to cover this topic because I think there's a bit of confusion and people struggle with the idea of recapturing or repurposing their career, taking it in a new direction. And these questions seem to arise again and again. So that's what we're going to cover today. So first, I want to talk a little bit about the consulting I do. I've been doing database development and general IT work for years. I've been consulting part-time starting in 1992 and went full-time in 1995. I've done everything from network integration work and database and automation, office automation, document assembly, report assembly, as well as content creation and social media. And what happened is I launched Pulse Infomatics based on some projects we were doing in the report and financial reporting automation, basically. And what was happening is a number of companies purchased a variety of products that they track their business on, and they might have an accounting package and they might have a manufacturing package. And those two don't talk to each other. And they might even have some third database, some CRM, and they're really disconnected. And the dream of having a completely unified system is, typically not a reality. Companies grow and different needs come up and they buy different products to meet those needs. Once again, pretty common. And then what happens is they have financial analysts and business analysts and clerical people that are compiling reports, sometimes hours each week, to give to management. And what they do is they take information from all those systems and then they compile them together in a number of spreadsheets, and those reports tend to be late incoming. Management gets them sometimes weeks after things have happened. If there's a problem with the numbers, they have to go back to the source data and figure out, was it a clerical input error or was there an error with the source data? And this goes on and on. And so what I was doing for a couple companies was creating automated reporting systems and basically just using either .NET or Visual Basic for applications and Excel, sometimes an Access front end, to connect to multiple systems. And by doing that, I could provide a unified reporting system. And that's the same way that we did document assembly. We could reach into multiple databases and automate some kind of workflow. So that's what Pulse Infomatics was born out of. But what happened is, because I'm an author and I've done some content strategy for people, had a series of very successful campaigns for some restaurants where we helped them grow their social media reach in a way that actually grew their business. And there's a particular way that I approach doing that. It involves actually using a mailing list and getting people on some high value proposition and really great fun content. And so that's what we were doing with social media. And because social media is such a hot topic, a lot of people were asking us to do that. more and more of my business was going that direction. But what I discovered, and particularly over this last year, was that the amount of money we made for the time spent on social just didn't warrant us giving it that kind of attention. While it's a sexy topic and it's fun to do the creative side of that, the truth is people don't spend as much monthly on social media and marketing as they do on internal systems and automation. And in particular for the size client that we were going for, let's say the 25 person to 200 person firm, they just spend a lot more on systems and automation than they ever will on social media. I made a decision, and this will be included in some future podcast about consulting and setting your fees and rates and things like that. But I just made a determination that we were much better off pursuing automation work. And so we have, over the past several weeks, divested ourselves of most of our social media clients. We're focusing almost exclusively back on automation and database work. We still do IT infrastructure, but the reason I mention this is because I had to step back and make a decision and let go of something. And this is part of what happens when you refocus or repurpose your career. It's the most fearful aspect of that. Are you willing to let go of something to pursue something else or focus on a particular area? And I'm not one of those people that say you must specialize in IT in your career. I think you can have a broad set of skills, but particularly if you're building a business or consulting, it's a lot easier to tell your story when you focus exclusively in one area. Once you're into a client, you can expand what you're doing with them as you have conversations. But having a focus and a niche where you spend your time and you create your message, whether that's on your resume or whether it's in your marketing materials, makes things a lot simpler. But it's really challenging, fearful to let go, particularly when really percentage-wise more of our business was going the social route and people were beginning to know us as the company that did content strategy and social media. And so I've gone back and rebranded our website, rebranded some materials, created a message that went out to a bunch of our past clients and contacts, and basically said, look, here's our refocus, here's why we're doing it. Really, it comes down to just the financials and what we believe is the best business opportunity. Also, it plays right to our core strategies, our core competencies, things that we can do really well for people that we think other people can't. And also a realization that, from my perspective, while everybody wants social, very few people want to spend money on it because there's such a speculative nature of the marketing side of things. This is a very real situation where I had to refocus and repurpose the materials we were doing and our direction and let go of something. And at first I kind of half let go. I said, we'll continue to do this. And we mentioned that initially on the website. We'd continue to do some content strategy things. But I've actually removed that completely. I've removed it out of what I'm going to do. If people approach me about it, I'll point them in the direction of some resources they could use for defining a content strategy. But I personally am not going to make that as part of our business approach and business strategy. I've completely removed it from the conversation, and I will actually turn down that work in light of pursuing the work that's going to generate what we think is our best opportunity and our best way to achieve success for our clients and for ourselves. So in any case, that's what occurs when you repurpose something. In relation to people with careers, I hear a lot of people, and I've had conversations, and recently was approached by a young man who's been working on computers for years, has an aptitude for it, loves working on them, but had kind of approached me and said, well, the problem is right now I can't go back to school and nobody will hire you if you don't have a degree in IT, and I just don't know if I can do that just yet. I have to go make immediate money, which is always a concern. There's always the trade-off between immediate money and speculative money, or what you're going to do down the road, particularly as you get a little bit older and more established in life. He's not old by any means. I think he's 24, 25 years old, but he does have a need to earn money in the immediate, and going to school, certainly a dedicated schooling is not an option for him at this particular time. So we talked about that a little bit, and I asked him why he felt that people wanted him to have a degree before he could start doing things in IT and learning new things. And we talked a little bit about some options for him. And what I told him is, I said, listen, right now there are sites online where you can learn automation and programming, and you can take on projects. You've got a computer. You could go find a small company and give them a little bit of time on the side. And this brings up the whole conversation of internships. Should they be paid or not paid? I told him, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't care whether it's paid or not. What you need to do is have project work. It's like going to college, only faster. And so I kind of opened his eyes to this idea that you could approach a small business, maybe one that doesn't have an established budget. Maybe a friend of his has a business that isn't really earning money yet. He's trying to kick it off the ground and he needs technology help. Well, guess what? That's a great opportunity for you to build some solutions for him on the side, part-time. He can't really harp on you because he's not really paying you, right? And he's not making money, so he's not taking advantage of you, and that's that conversation. We'll talk about that in a second. But I opened up his eyes to going out and getting the project experience as more important, more vital than your degree. I said you can go back and do the degree later, but nobody who's hiring anybody really cares about the degree. The degree is simply a mechanism to help them lower the number of resumes they have to go through when they post a job. But I explained, and I'll have a link to it on this particular podcast, the way that employers look for work versus the way that employees go and look for opportunity is almost diametrically opposite. Employees, typically people looking for a job, go to want ads, posted jobs, but employers always go to a known commodity first. The last place they go is to the want ad market, right? Because that's a very speculative and fearful thing. They don't know what they're going to get. And so the one thing I could tell you, if you're going to repurpose your career, if you want to change directions, if you want to focus on a new area, maybe a skill you haven't spent a lot of time in, the first thing I would say is start today. Start today and learn some of those skills. There are a ton of resources online. As I tell people when I'm speaking in public all the time, I say, listen, I'm going to give you a clue, a secret place you can go to learn almost anything. Don't let it out of this room. So I'm going to give this secret here on the podcast. Please do not let other people know what I share with you on this podcast right now, because I'm going to give you a secret. If you go to your browser and you open it up and you type in www.google.com. What's going to happen is this magical site comes up and you can enter almost any question of what you want to learn right in there. How can I learn to program? How do I program in SQL Server? How do I program in MySQL? How can I program in PHP? What is PHP? What is Visual Basic for applications? What is .NET? If you type that into that secret box, it's going to give you a lot of answers and you can learn a lot. Now, the other place you can go, works in conjunction with that, is YouTube. So I'm going to tell you those two resources alone can give you a jump start on almost anything you want to learn. Now, of course, you'll need to take part in some kind of community where people share information. You're going to want to reach out, meet people who are further advanced in their career. One thing I would tell you, if you approach it with some humility and with a desire to give back to the community and you help others come along, there will be people who will help you. There will be people who will be happy to share knowledge with you if you go out there with the right attitude. And in doing that, in much less time than it would take to go to college, you can actually begin working in and with a particular skill set. And that's the way you repurpose and refocus your career. And when I explained this to this guy and I explained the concept of how employers look for talent versus how employees look for opportunity, and I said, listen, your job is to change where you're meeting the employer. And if that means going into small businesses door to door, which I get all kinds of feedback, people saying you can't do that. I still do it to this day. We get work that way. So I don't know why somebody can't do it. Well, I absolutely know with 100% certainty that you can do it as a way to find an opportunity and a job. People can argue and people will say something contrary to that, and that's fine. Everybody's allowed to be wrong. It's okay. I won't back down on this because I know with 100% certainty, having coached many people and used it myself, that it absolutely 100% works. You can put yourself in an opportunity to meet employers, people who need the talent where they're looking for talent. Now, it might mean that you find part-time job or part-time work. You might only get contract work. You might only get a limited amount of time work. Who cares? What you're looking to do is advance your skills while you're actually doing whatever other work you're doing to refocus and repurpose your career. And once you have those project skills, through referrals and other mechanisms, you can get referred to larger employers who will then say, hey, yeah, submit your application through the online form. I'll look for it. And suddenly you're not just one of the masses of people there, and they know you've done some project work. And that will trump the fact that whether you do or don't have a particular certification or a particular degree. I promise you, that's 100% true. This is why interning matters, and people argue with me on this. Interning is one of the most critical things you can do. And when I say interning, I mean interning whether it's free or not. And we had a big discussion on this on my Toolbox blog years ago and had these conversations versus on Twitter, and people disagree with me. Once again, that's cool. I'm fine with people being wrong. But the truth is, interning, I know that sounds really arrogant, but the truth is, I don't want people being taken advantage of. If you're interning and all they're having you do is grab coffee and do paperwork, fine. Don't intern for them. But if you're getting to work on some projects where you learn some skills, even if those projects aren't valuable to the employer itself, meaning they don't use them right now or they're not billing for them, if you're just working on stuff where they give you a project and you go build it, that's better than college. And people pay for college. You actually pay thousands and thousands of dollars to get a degree with almost no project experience. Why would you not give time to somebody who will give you some project experience, and within a 3 to 6 month period of time, you will have learned as much as you're going to learn in 4 years of college? I promise you, the stuff you learn in a semester of programming is there's my dog barking, is no better. It's actually not as effective as what you will learn in 6 months of actual project work. And anybody who's been in the field long enough knows that this is the case. If you're going to refocus or repurpose your career, my biggest piece of advice to you is start today. You don't need permission. Or if you want permission, I give you permission. I give you permission to learn the skills you want to take on before you take any class, before you get an actual project at your work. I give you permission to build projects on your own and create relationships outside of your current work environment that will pay dividends down the road. Opportunities to meet the right kind of people that later on will become conduits and people that can refer you into the kind of work and the kind of employer you want to get to. And so that's my admonishment. Start today and learn the skills to refocus and repurpose your career. Now, I'd love to get your feedback on that. I know there are people who disagree with me on the interning. I know there are people who disagree with me on working for free if you need to. I still do it to this day. I know it works, but if you have a contrary opinion, a way that you can fast track people into a new job or into the right kind of project work, please let me know. Let me know where the fault in my logic is. I'd love to hear from you. Or if you agree, if you've used that as a method, I'd love to hear from you as well. You can leave comments right on the podcast page. You can leave an audio comment directly right there. You can just plug it in. We'd love to use it on the podcast. This is what I view as the most effective way to refocus and repurpose your career. I want to thank you for listening to the Building Your IT Career podcast. Once again, I'm Matt Moran, and thanks for tuning in.